been an ongoing battle between the Charleston carriage industry and the Charleston Animal Society over the safety and concern of the horses and mules in downtown Charleston. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sat down with Joe Elmore of the Charleston Animal Society.
This thing about those banners downtown and everything, you know, remember, for me, who served in the first Persian Gulf crisis, you're probably too young to remember that. For me, I mean, that was back in 1990. It's to go over there and to volunteer to go over there and to wake up night after night as Scud missiles were coming over and out of your sleep, and you have 7 seconds to put on a gas mask. Living in a tent for over a year in the desert. Coming back with a layer of my eyes burned from that whole episode. I'm very, very proud of the service that I provided in my country, because we were liberating Kuwait so that those folks could enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy here. And one of those, the biggest freedoms is freedom, free speech. So when people are exercising their free speech by putting up banners, whomever it is that is going to steal those banners, how about this? Understand the country that we live in, the freedoms that many of us have gone to war and served to ensure those freedoms for not only us, but for other people across the planet. Go find your own buildings, your own houses to put up your banners. We have a banner, we have a banner. Did we make the banners? No. Do we support that? Yeah, because it calls for humane treatment of animals. That's what it calls for, humane treatment of animals. And that's why we support that. It's, but exercise your freedom of speech. Don't commit a crime, and that is a crime. So when that incident, as soon as that woman said, I work for Charleston Animal Society, she doesn't work for Charleston Animal Society.
Okay.
I condemn those kinds of tactics and everything, but to this date, I have not heard any statement from the carriage horse industry disassociating themselves from the crimes committed against those individuals exercising their free speech with the stealing of those banners. I haven't heard any comments criticizing it or condemning those kinds of tactics. And I welcome the carriage horse industry to disassociate themselves from that action, condemn that kind of action, etc., for 2 reasons. 1, it is a crime, and 2, it is exercising free speech, which is a tenet of this nation and where it is and what we are as Americans. So I didn't mean to give you a lecture.
Oh no, you're fine.
But anyway, that's kind of responses you can get from it.
Okay, and let me clear up a couple of rumors, because I've heard so many things in person to person and on social media. Okay, yes or no? Will you provide your own horses for the scientific study?
2 reasons. No.
Okay.
Yes or no? Okay, no. And here's the reason.
Okay.
It will not be scientific, and we knew that immediately.
Okay.
We've participated enough that we know that that would not be scientific.
Okay.
The leading researcher at the University of Tennessee, Animal Sciences,
Right.
Dr. Jeannie Ivey, has said, I mean, she, you know, scientists, you know, they will send you these long letters. She's already invalidated, say, well, that will invalidate the study. But the second reason, and I told some of the carriage horse operators who were there the other night, and I told them this.
Okay.
You know, I said, you guys are shooting yourselves in the foot, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
What if I were, now one is, actually 2 reasons. The third reason is, I don't have a barn downtown, okay? I don't have horse trailers and all that kind of stuff. I don't have pastures to bring them in. I'd have to go out and buy all that kind of stuff. I don't have it. But if we were to do it, and this is why they're shooting themselves in the foot, and they haven't thought it through. If you bring in a fresh team of horses and start a study, and that team of horses is not accustomed to pulling carriages around the streets of Charleston and everything, they are going to have a higher reactivity to the stressors downtown. Basically, it's a new environment. It would be a new environment for them, okay? And this is what the scientists have said as well. So they are going to react much more sensitively and much, much more to those stressors. And that's going to come back and really, really demonstrate that the current conditions are not acceptable or appropriate, okay? And that is the third reason that we won't do it, is that you guys are shooting yourselves in the foot, because to throw out that PR gimmick, if you will, you know, it's you're actually going to create more situations, more extreme results, that type of thing, than a bona fide scientific study. A scientific study that's peer-reviewed, and Dr. Weinstein with the Planning Commission reaffirmed this the other night. He said there is no way to bias it. It doesn't matter who pays for it. If it is a peer-reviewed, accepted scientific study, and scientific studies have to go through so many layers, and in fact, the University of Tennessee, it would have to meet the muster, if you will, for not one board of scientists, but two board of scientists who evaluate scientific studies, etc. And then there are other layers before it can be published that would have to accept that. You know, there was a few years ago there was an internist with the Edisto Equine Clinic that a number of years ago that went in and did a retrospective review. I've heard some people refer to it as a study. It's not a study. It's a review looking backward, and said some complimentary things and all. But also in the review said studies are needed. So, and this was a number of years ago. And so we contacted her and asked her about it as well. And she is endorsing and supporting a scientific study. So here's the thing too. This is an opportunity to lead. This is an opportunity to lead. And it's the carriage horse companies, I hope they will do this, is in Charleston. I hope the city of Charleston will stop playing these games and see where this is an opportunity to lead, is that this is the epicenter in the nation for carriage horses. Now, other cities across the nation, they carry about half the load or less. What I refer to as the Cinderella carriages, you know, not the big wagons and everything. Right. So it's, I feel like we have a disproportionate responsibility to do this here. And then cities across America and across the world can learn from it, and create their own parameters as well. So this is a real opportunity for our community to lead. Another way that the carriage horse companies have shot themselves in the foot, so to speak, particularly in PR, from a PR perspective, is that they have thrown all these accusations that we are calling them animal abusers, and we're not. I said it, and I said it again at the Planning Commission meeting. I said, we have never called anyone an animal abuser. Y'all have called yourselves that, trying to put words into our mouth. And we have, so you've put that out into the public lexicon. So you've actually poured fuel on the fire by throwing that term out. We're not animal abusers. We're not animal abusers. Well, we never called you animal abusers. We said the system is inhumane. You know?
Okay, and another question that I've gotten from so many people is this. Are you in this for the money or for passion?
Yeah. It's, our mission is to prevent cruelty to animals. And when we hear people complain and raise those questions, like with anything, we start with an investigation. We start to look into everything. This is our mission. This is what we do. This is our passion. This thing about into the home because we're doing it for the money and that type of thing. We're not doing it for the money. That's another distraction. That's another distraction. Like, oh, they're not really no-kill, or they're doing it for the money. Let's focus on what we've said from the outset, from the outside. The system is inhumane. Now here's the thing is, the law which the city asked us to be a part of in crafting, and we represent a constituency across this community, and we have an obligation to that constituency, and we must honor that constituency because it is a community constituency. And when we discovered that after 10 years of not following a law and not enforcing a law governing or regulating an enterprise that is controversial, we're going to speak out. You know, we're not going to be a part of something that is supposed to lead to a set of conditions that are humane for animals, and then it's just on paper. It's not followed.
Okay.
And so we're not just going to rubber stamp things like that and not go back and verify it.
Okay.
And again, when you have City of Charleston police employees, when you have former carriage horse employees, when you have tourists, residents, horse lovers, experienced horse lovers, enthusiasts, all call us complaining and everything, you know, that's where we started. And the fact of the matter is, and you probably have heard this saying, Quintin, but you know, own what you do.
Okay.
Own it. Own your baggage. You probably have heard it some different ways too. Right? But you know, just own it. Just own it.
Okay.
Own that you haven't, the city and the carriage horse operators, own that there are problems. You know, don't say it ain't broken. It is broken. Okay? It is broken. And then when you do things like gimmicks, like put together a bogus committee, not allow independent veterinarians to be a part of it, disallow certain people, when it's supposed to be a citizens committee, and you're disallowing citizens that you don't want on there to be on there, and you noodle around with numbers and call them scientific when they're not. And that's been going around a lot. Oh, this scientific data, this 20,000 points of data. It's not scientific, and a leading researcher at the Medical University of South Carolina has already debunked that notion that it is scientific. Okay, you come up with a threshold to lower the temperature. 95 degrees. Okay, and this is what I told City Council. Okay, I get that.
Okay.
I get that, 95 degrees. But then when you throw in, but we're going to measure it 4 different times. Well, what's wrong with measuring it twice now, as you're doing, when it was originally supposed to be measured once? And cities across, rank and file cities across America are pulling the horses in when it reaches that temperature threshold once. Why are you increasing it 4 different times? To nullify, to negate the effect of lowering the temperature to 95, which is still the top end in the nation in terms of temperature extremes. That's where public confidence in the system erodes. That's where our confidence in the system of oversight and compliance erodes, is when you do something like that. Lower it to 95. And then leave it at that. Don't play tricks with it. And so as it's being messaged, you know, oh, we're lowering the temperature, you know, tell the whole story. Tell the whole story. But we're increasing the measurements 4 different times. Oh, well, because of fluctuation in temperatures. Well, those 24 other cities across America, temperatures don't fluctuate there. You know? But then when we also say, you know, in the public, this is what the public wants. The public, and it makes common sense. Okay. You know, let's say, I don't know if did you play sports or anything like that? You know, let's say you played football. I used to play football. I say, well, you measure the temperature where you play football. Okay, down on the field. You don't measure it up in the skybox. You know, you measure it down on the field, where you're actually working, where you're performing. The Olympics, when the horses are performing, when the athletes are performing, you measure it on track and field. You measure it where they're performing. You don't measure it on top of a hotel. So when we say, you know, when the public says, you know, about bringing it down to street level and measure it in their working environment. If OSHA regulated animals, which they don't, they regulate workplace safety for humans, but if they regulated it for animals, they would do what they do with workplace safety for humans, and that is measuring safety in the workplace where the humans are working. And that's what you do. But then to respond, well, it can't be done there. Well, yes, it can. Just be honest. Be honest with how you're informing these public bodies that are making these decisions. It's a weatherbug station. That's the name of the company.
Right.
A year and a half ago, I contacted Weatherbug.
Okay.
And I just asked them a simple question.
Okay.
Is there an altitude requirement for a weatherbug station? And they said no. Okay. Well, recently, a citizen here in Charleston who presented at City Council sat down and met with the director of Weatherbug and their regional sales manager. And they said, not only can you put the weather station down there at that level in the working environment of the horses, it'll cost about $3,000, and we can do it in about 2 weeks. And the citizen said, okay. And he said, so he presented it to city council, and he said, and we've already got people that'll pay for it. We just have to make it happen, and they can do it, they can install it and do it in about 2 weeks. We can do it before we get into the heat of summer, that kind of thing. Those are things, those are actions that can be taken to gain public confidence, to increase public confidence in the system. And that's what much of it is about, is the confidence in the system. You know.
Oh, and let me ask you one last question. They keep asking me this too,
right?
And I want to get your side to it. Yes or no? Have you been able to go down to the carriage companies and the stables and see what's going on down there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And what have they told you?
From what I understand from my interview with Tom Doyle Sr., he said no. He hasn't seen anybody from the Charleston Animal Society down there.
Right. Yeah, I want you to hear this very clearly.
Okay.
I have met. We've been to 3 different times. I have gone downtown to meet with him. Our board president at the time met with him, I think 1 or 2 times. Our point person on this has gone down to different barns and even out to pastures. Okay, we have been there. We have left the animal care campus and have gone to all these different places to meet with them, to look at all of this stuff and everything. Even though the barns and the pastures are not where the horses are working. You know, I can keep my dog on a chain to a tree out in the yard all day long. Now, is that legal? Yeah. Are people comfortable with that? Most people are not comfortable with that. And then I can tell you, well, come over to my house tonight when I have my dog in my house and see how happy my dog is. Now, that doesn't make any sense, because the animals are not working in the barns. They're not, so they always come down to the barns and see the barns. Yes, we have been down, the Animal Society has been down to the barns, been to the pastures, gone out and met with them and everything. There's not a single carriage horse operator who has ever come up here to meet with us. And my door is open. The dialogue has always been open. Not a single one has come up here to meet with us. We have gone down a number of times to meet with them. So these statements that they've never been out to the barns, never been out to the pastures, never been to see us, and all that kind of stuff is just not true.
And one last thing.
I mean, is that clear? Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
We deal with facts, because if we didn't deal with facts, then we would not be able to be a participant in these investigations with law enforcement, because we would not have the credibility. But we have a lot of credibility, and that's why the courts, the solicitor's office, the sheriff's department, the police departments, that kind of thing, work very closely with us. When there's an animal cruelty case, we're out there with them. They bring the animal to us. We have the necropsy conducted, and we do it the best way possible. We send the animal to the University of Georgia Veterinary School so that they can do a full necropsy. They're the closest entity that is the most qualified to do those, or veterinary schools, basically.
Okay.
And sometimes you have pet veterinarians involved, you have pathologists involved, sometimes you have anatomists involved,
okay.
and only those kinds of resources are available through a university and everything. I'll tell you something else.
Okay.
I'll tell you something else. You know, a lot of this is about heat. You know, and that's another distraction. It's all about heat. It's all about heat. I noticed the city of Charleston tourism person, came out with, it wasn't heat related. Why do they keep saying that and asserting that? We've never asserted that heat was the cause of any incident. The Blondie incident 2 years ago or so, we never asserted that the heat was the cause of that. But it was all about, it's not heat related, it's not heat related, it's not heat related, and everything. I'll tell you the problem with that and why we don't assert those things. Because in veterinary forensics, it is extremely, extremely difficult to determine heat as a causal factor in death of an animal. Do you remember, I think it was about 1.5 years ago, there was an incident in August. It was not August of last year, but the previous year, I believe it was, where 9 dogs were left in a car, and all 9 died. They were left in the car, I believe, for about 4 hours, and in August, and they all died. Okay. Well, common sense would tell most people it's the heat. right? I mean, it makes sense, right? In August, you leave 9 dogs in a car, and then you come back and they're all dead. The pathologist in Colombia could not determine that it was heat. That's how difficult it is to identify heat as a causal factor in the death of an animal. You can say that it's probably a contributing factor, that kind of thing. So they charged the individual with abandonment of the animals, okay? Because it's not clear that that was the cause of death. Okay. Yeah. Now, with that Blondie incident, I wrote a letter to Mayor Riley,
Right.
and I asked for an independent review of that situation for 2 reasons. 2 reasons. One is so that to learn how do we prevent these things from happening again, and 2, how do we effect a better community response to them versus having a downed animal on the hot pavement for approximately 3 hours before that animal could be moved. You know, how can we do this better? I even went so far as to offer to both the city and the carriage horse companies, in the meantime, if that situation were to happen again, okay, and on that particular situation, the equine veterinarian, I believe, happened to be in proximity, but was out of Edisto. You know, what if she were down at Edisto, you know, and had to travel all of that distance, you know? So so it was coincidental that she wasn't that far away.
Okay.
But I offered to both the city and the carriage horse companies, should that happen again, and if I'm able to do this, meaning that I don't have to pull one of my surgeons out of surgery. I mean, obviously can't do that, you know, just leave somebody else. You know. Right. But if I could pull one of my surgeons without them pulling them out of surgery, and I can get them down there in about 25 minutes, okay, to initiate the kind of treatment that only a licensed veterinarian can initiate under the direction by cell phone to your veterinarian. Okay. I offer that to you at no cost to you, okay, so that the animal doesn't have to be distressed. And so you know, when we did that, we didn't assert that it was heat. We asked for an independent review of it. You know, for example, I'll tell you something that came out of that. Okay, was that I believe the carriage horse driver, I believe I'm not mistaken, said in the report that Blondie is not comfortable around those big trucks. Well then, let's devise a system so that Blondie doesn't have to be placed in harm's way when we know it's harm's way. Meaning that if the animal is uncomfortable around big machinery or big trucks, well, let's not take them down and put them in that environment. You know, let's reroute them and that type of thing. Those are the kinds of things that we look for in terms of learning. Okay?
And another question that I've been getting from a lot of people, a lot of viewers, is this: are you guys running low on donations or cat food or anything like that?
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
All right. We do. Again, another distraction from the issue. Another distraction from the issue. Okay? Oh, well, let's focus in on their food drive and everything. We have 2 sources of food that we use. Okay. Okay? And we're just now starting our busiest time of year for animal intake, mainly because of the cat season, cat and kitten season. So we will increase from somewhere around 200 animals towards late June, upwards of around 800 animals. Okay, so we're starting to increase. We go from basically in spring, we triple and quadruple the amount of animals that we have in our system. All right. So the 2 sources of food. One is we're participating in a shelter program for a consistent diet for the shelter animals. Okay. The other food is for 2 things. One is for our food bank that we operate about 6 days. We may operate it 7 days a week. I mean, if somebody comes in on Sunday, we're not going to turn them away. Okay. But basically, it operates like Monday through Saturday. You know, stretched across. I believe that we do actually do it on Sunday too. And it goes back to what I told you earlier. You know, if you come in and if you're having difficulty making ends meet for whatever reason, and you need food for your animal, all right, then through our food bank, we'll give you food for your animal.
Okay.
Now, what we ask you is, and we don't ask for your income and that kind of stuff, you know, because that's none of our business, you know. It may be, whatever your financial struggles are your financial struggles. We just want the animal fed. The community feels good about it. We go through food like that. We go through food like that with the food bank. And we also help them with their veterinary expenses, you know, if they need to. And our area veterinarians work really well with us, work very closely with us and helping us and giving them breaks and that kind of thing. You know. But that's the source of food that we do food drives on, in addition to our foster program, where our volunteer families are keeping animals in their home so that, you know, whatever the reason is, it might be a medical condition. Most of the time it's medical conditions. With kittens, it's because they need to be up to a certain weight. So kittens typically will come in, you know, less than a pound or a pound, and they're brought in really, really early. And what we do is we like to get them up to about 2 pounds before we do the surgery and everything, because those are the national spay-neuter guidelines or standards, if you will, to do that. So we have so we do food drives all the time. We do food drives all the time. And the smear campaign launched against us for that. Oh, they have all this money and they can't, you know, and yet they have to beg for food and all that kind of stuff. Is exactly that. It's a smear campaign to distract from the issue. What is the issue? Is significant reform based on a scientific issue of a system that is not humane. Not people that are not humane, a system that is not humane. But I'm not out there. I'm not out there calling people wretched hive of scum and villains. I'm not out there. Have anybody put a foot in downtown, in a downtown barn? Yeah, we have. I'm not out there hashtagging as a carriage horse company employee, suck a you-know-what Joe. If that were one of my employees, I would have fired them on the spot. Even if they did it on their personal Facebook page, if that were my employee, I would fire them, you know. But that's the kind of standard that we follow here. And I'm not trying to impose that on anyone else, but you know, when you go up to city council, when you go up to the planning commission and you complain about people criticizing you and being nasty and mean and social media and everything like that, I'll tell you one thing, it's not coming from Charleston Animal Society, but when your own carriage horse employees and carriage horse owners are spewing this hate, you know, it's like, you know, let's be a little less hypocritical. You know, let's be a little less hypocritical. You know.
Joe Elmore, thank you so much for this extensive interview. I really appreciate this.
Well, thank you, Quintin. I just want to, you know, set the record straight, get the facts out there.
Right.
My door is always open to the carriage horse company.
Sure.
You know, and that it has never been closed.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.